Hello, this is David Banks, and I'm discussing 1954's Godzilla as a piece of eco-cinema. While the film is most known for its nuclear bomb metaphor, it also presents an allegory for society's response to environmental issues overall. We see this throughout the film, observing a critical lens of society's anthropocentric ideals. It's important to examine the nature of Godzilla, and how it represents the layered allegory presented in the film. Godzilla is a mesh of both natural and technological sublimity simultaneously. Godzilla's origins highlight the nature-culture binary. The film expresses how cultures become divided from nature and shifted to an anthropocentric worldview. We learn about Godzilla's natural habitat prior to the events of the film, particularly its symbiotic relationship with humans as a source of food. The villagers developed a religious ritual around Godzilla as a predator, serving as a tertiary consumer below Godzilla and above the fish. In the modern age, such rituals are frowned upon, much to the annoyance of this elder, who expresses declinist ideas about society's continued division between the nature-culture binary. Beliefs are somewhat validated by how the film plays out. Godzilla becomes a major issue because people are ignorant of the legitimacy of the threat he poses, and efforts to stop him are delayed due to the society's conflicting ideologies. Godzilla was, at some point, a completely natural creature, just another predator in nature, existing in an environment that was sustainable for it to coexist with other species. This environment, however, has been tainted and disturbed by human activity, particularly the nuclear testings that were performed by the United States government not long after the war ended. Godzilla's existence prior to nuclear technology is an example of nature's sublimity. The idea that such a massive creature could exist in the ocean is both terrifying and amazing at the same time. Furthermore, Godzilla's destructive nature is amplified by humanity's pollution and nuclear waste, reflecting the horrific implication of humanity's impact on the environment. Much has been said about Godzilla's metaphor for the nuclear bombing of Japan during World War II, and upon a modern viewing we can see many similarities to how humanity addresses Godzilla, with how society deals with environmental issues in the modern age. The main antagonistic force of the film, next to Godzilla itself, is the politics regarding environmental issues. The reason Godzilla is able to rampage throughout Japan in the first place is because society is too focused on itself. At the very beginning of the film, we already see a common response to environmental issues: mitigating ecophobia. Instead of openly addressing the issues, the government tries to minimize the severity of the situation and ensure people remain calm. The Parliament scene plays a key role in solidifying the commentary of politics regarding environmental issues as a part of the film's greater allegory. This group, the anthropocentric politicians, are not quick to accept the researchers' claims, not because of a disagreement in evidence, but rather because it is an inconvenience for their policies. The other group, the ecocentric politicians, take note of the researchers' findings. The anthropocentric politicians are so worried about maintaining their policy, they interrupt the researchers, fixated on how this affects their agenda and not how it affects humanity and the environment as a whole. The researchers and scientists, who have their own opinions regarding their findings, choose to simply state the facts and attempt to remain neutral so that some form of action will be agreed upon. Despite knowing that the environmental threat is real, the anthropocentric politicians elect not to tell the public. Whereas the ecocentric politicians argue the opposite. They support the idea of raising awareness of environmental issues, and want the people's support to make policies to deal with environmental issues before they get out of control. Even though the anthropocentric politicians are fully aware of the environmental issue, they are more worried about their foreign policy and controlling ecophobia than they are with actually dealing with the issues. They directly state that they wish to avoid an ecophobia outbreak, because they know if the issues are made public, people will expect the government to take action, diverging them from their anthropocentric priorities. They are focused on the culture side of nature-culture binary, seeing humans as distinct and unaffected by environmental issues. The ecocentric politicians, recognizing that their voice will be ignored in the debate and understanding their lack of individual agency, intend to intentionally spark ecophobia amongst the public. All throughout the argument, the researchers who presented the theories and evidence sit in silence. They realize how little agency they have in this world, that even with verified evidence, people will not understand the severity of environmental issues. After the truth has come out, we see protests against Godzilla and the lack of action being taken by the government to deal with it. This is exactly what the anthropocentric politicians wanted to avoid, as they now are expected to diverge from their anthropocentric agenda and address the environmental issues properly. The common people begin calling out the political discourse that is preventing the eradication of environmental threats. Even when the anthropocentric politicians do address the environmental threat, they frame it in a way that focuses on their ideals, still worried more about global economics rather than the effects Godzilla may impose on both the environment and humanity. Although the protesters' comments may not reflect a full understanding of the political system, the sentiment is valid. The film is critiquing how governments often fail to address environmental issues because they are too preoccupied with the Anthropocene world. This brings us to the next major aspect of the allegory. The film's focus on society's collective response to environmental issues. Unlike many Hollywood films, Godzilla focuses on a collective response to the film's conflict, reflecting a society's collective response to environmental emergencies. We see this idea presented right from the start of the film, when we focus on the sailors that are first attacked by Godzilla. The characters that might be considered the main protagonists, Ogata and Emiko, take a backseat for most of the film. The only reason we do follow them is because of their close relationship with the researchers and scientists that are involved with stopping Godzilla. The film instead chooses to focus on Japan's collective response to Godzilla, and allegorically shows the response of a society to environmental threats. We see how the fishermen are impacted because of Godzilla's presence, reflecting how the ecosystem is being harmed thanks to humanity's impact on and disregard for nature. Continuing the allegory of a society's response to environmental issues, we see the common folks' response to the political discourse involving environmental issues via the train scene. The film directly addresses ongoing real-world environmental issues, and places Godzilla amongst them. Anthropocentric individuals have a complete ignorance of the reality environmental threat poses. He uses it as a joke, like those that claim they don't care about climate change because it means less snow in winter. The particular use of the word we is interesting. The passenger is not directly to blame, but she recognizes that humanity's impact on the environment is a collective issue that can only be solved by the collective. This character recognizes the severity of the threat, but instead of being spun into a spiral of ecophobia, he accepts that he'll just have to make some life changes. The anthropocentric individual disdains having to make a slight change. He is the kind of person who would complain about the disappearance of plastic straws, afraid of making even the slightest change to improve environmental issues. The original Godzilla presents society as undervaluing of ecological threats, afraid to address the consequences of its pollution of nature, which have now returned from being repressed. Whenever society overestimates its ability to deal with environmental issues, this theme plays. We first hear it with the research team. They are sent off in a celebratory manner, despite not yet succeeding in any way. This theme plays throughout the film, and signifies the anthropological obsession with preemptive celebrations. It is an ironic, heroic fanfare, as nothing has or will be accomplished by society's half-effort attempts to brush off environmental issues. The film adds to this criticism by highlighting the naivety of society to continuously ignore critical environmental issues. Even when a creature like Godzilla exists, people will still try and live their lives the same as before. Global pandemics like the COVID-19 virus reflect this, with individuals refusing to change their lifestyles. People living in the Anthropocene fail to comprehend how little agency they have against environmental issues, and how they are just as affected by it as everyone else. The few ecocentric characters in the film understand how impacted they are by the threat, and feel helpless due to their lack of agency. Another element of Godzilla's allegory is the media coverage on ecological issues. We see several reporters throughout the film, and how often they use the threat of Godzilla as a headline to sell papers. The main reporter we follow is focused on raising awareness and finding a story, but is still very evidently from an anthropocentric world, first seen in how he is off-put by the naturalistic way of the villagers on Oto Island. We see the reporters arguing over what angle to take with a recent news story, either the ecological perspective or the anthropocentric perspective. Their facts can often be exaggerated to draw attention for views or headlines, often seemingly forgetting that they themselves are at risk to these very issues. At the end of the day, the reporters in the film are still shown as human. They try to comment on environmental issues, and attempt to raise awareness, but are ironically unaware of the danger they themselves are in, with little agency as individuals to change minds. Their only power is in the press, which can be used to raise awareness when done properly. Finally, one of the most important aspects of the environmental issues allegory is the character Professor Kyohei Yamane. He embodies all of the film's themes, and is a biocentric character in an Anthropocene world. He represents biocentrism and deep ecology, the belief that every creature has intrinsic value and importance placed on nature over culture completely. The film critiques the extremes of his ideas, however does not completely dismiss them. The professor is shown to be a very intelligent and mature individual. He deeply cares about the environment and preserving creatures. However, the film is quite critical of his belief that nature is more important than humans. In this aspect, the film is critical of deep ecology. Professor Yamane is so off-put by the idea of killing Godzilla he becomes depressed. For the majority of the film, he is a staunch believer in preserving Godzilla as an endangered species. He believes that Godzilla, as an animal, is crucial to the environment and must exist for a reason. The film criticizes his inability to recognize the legitimacy of the threat Godzilla poses, and shows him as more concerned about preserving an endangered animal and studying it. This clashes with the professor's personal relationships, alienating himself because of what the film considers extreme beliefs. The film also presents Professor Yamane's deep ecologist beliefs as getting in the way of dealing with Godzilla as an environmental threat, that he is actually hurting the environment rather than helping it. By focusing too much on the positive side of nature, the idea that anything natural must be good, Yamane ignores the threat posed by Godzilla, ignoring its origins in human destruction. Even when Godzilla threatens his life, the professor's deep ecologist ideals lead him to attempting to stop the military's attack on Godzilla. He is putting the life of what he perceives as a natural creature above the lives of everyone he knows. It is only after witnessing Godzilla's full destructive powers that the professor changes his mind. He recognizes the threat of Godzilla after seeing it firsthand, and shifts from a biocentric mindset to an ecocentric one. While he still holds his ecological beliefs, Yamane now recognizes the environmental threat as an issue, no longer viewing Godzilla as a natural creature of the world. The professor's final words encapsulate the film's allegory for nuclear warfare, as well as society's response to environmental issues. The politics of ecology, the clash of ecocentric and anthropocentric mindsets, the lack of agency in individuals, and humanity's overall underestimation of the severity of real environmental threats are all argued as flaws in society. These critiques are still relevant today, and can be seen reflected in discussions of pollution, deforestation, and climate change. Thank you for listening.